What is
What?
We're live, son. What is shaking, y'all? Golden Mike 126 with your boy Marc Cordon. Today's guest is not only a coach, is not only a person who's been down a spiritual path, but is someone who has a warning for each and every one of us. There are people who mean well. That mean to help us clear out the things that are blocking us. But sometimes because of either lack of clarity on their part or maybe some personal agendas, I don't know what it is, but maybe because of some hidden agenda, they don't quite have our best interest at hand, and we end up getting into a codependent spiritual relationship with these folks. Today's guest is the Californian, Yossef Sagi. How are you, brother?
I'm good. I'm actually Canadian.
Oh, you are?
But, yes.
Well,
but I live in California. I'm adopted Californian.
You're an adopted Californian.
Yeah.
I mean, you're way too many places right now for me to be able to put in a native skin under. So, Canadian, Californian, you're far away from me, which sucks because, like, I love being around you and wrestling with you every time I see you in person.
I know. I
Yossef.
thought I was going to crash your studio today.
I know, it'll happen sooner or later. Now, I do have to say this. For those of you who have seen this, like, picture of Yossef that I posted, I need to know this. I'm going to see if I can actually share this with the audience.
Share the picture, because I don't know which one you're talking about.
I need to share this image with the audience. I'm going to share it right now. You guys got to see this. I'm stopping the show in its tracks to put this picture of Yossef up
important.
there. Now, Yossef, I don't know if you can see this, brother, but I'm putting this picture of you up there. I'm putting it above your actual face.
On top of my actual face?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, this picture of you is like, it's absolutely, your skin is absolutely perfect. Your eyes are popping. Like, I need to know, like, what filter you used for that, because that's like a total, like, dating website picture right there, dude.
Yes, no, this picture, listen, I'm big on authenticity, but that picture, I'll admit, is not 100% authentic. My eyes are that color when in the sun. So the color is accurate. There's no change on the color. There probably is some touch-ups on the skin. Yeah.
I just was like, this picture is too perfect of this boy, and he's like staring into my soul with those eyes. So I needed to call that out really quickly.
That's a headshot. That's an acting headshot, and so obviously it's it's been a little bit doctored. Yes.
So you're an actor as well.
I've dabbled. It's more of a hobby.
I've dabbled. Yeah. I've dabbled. Of course, the guy in California would say, I've dabbled in acting. I'd like to welcome everyone who's watching. For those of you who haven't met me, we're going to go and talk about this dumping the spiritual codependency piece with Yossef in a second. My name is Marc Cordon, founder of Make Money Coaching, which means I might be a spiritual codependent person myself if I'm not careful with it. Also, the chief disruptive officer of the Joy Revolution. Of course, I can become spiritually and create spiritual codependence if I'm not careful with that myself. But more important than that, I'm a positive psychology coach, which means this, Yossef, and everybody who's watching. On a daily basis, I get to ask myself and the people around me two simple questions. Question number 1, how happy are you today? Question number 2 is, how much are you living your life right now with purpose and meaning? I have a feeling that those questions can help you dislodge this idea of getting stuck in codependency. But I'm not going to end the show in the first 5 minutes. So I have an idea. So I'm going to ask Yossef. Yossef, how happy are you today, and how much are you living in your meaning and purpose?
Great. So happy. I'm super happy right now in this moment because I'm totally just with you here, and I love doing this with you. I also just got back in town. I got to do some amazing things over the last couple of weeks. I'm rating pretty high on happiness. As for purpose and meaning, I think that life is inherently purposeless and meaningless, but the purpose and meaning, it's something that I used to believe, that we each had like our unique purpose that we're meant to share. And if we're not going to share that unique purpose, then we're going to be unhappy. And I've sort of shifted the way that I've thought about that to the idea that purpose is something that we rely on a little bit to sort of feel like we are meaningful, like there's a reason why we're around. And I think that meaning and purpose is more something that you choose to bring into your life, and there's no inherent purpose or meaning. So that might sound a little bit bleak, but it's actually exciting in a way because it's a blank slate that you get to recreate your purpose or meaning at any time.
I love it. So you're either a 0 or a 10, or a 0 and a 10 at the same time.
0 and a 10 at the same time.
I love it. For those of you who have been thinking about meaning and purpose, you've been thinking about happiness. That's all I need you to do. All I need you to do is think about it. How happy are you, and how much are you living within this meaning and purpose? And you might say to yourself, well, that changes on a day-to-day basis, like Yossef just said. Give us some hearts. Let us know you're alive. How do you beat that heart over there? Oh, you beat it with your shoulders, Yossef. Is that what you do?
Yes, this is it.
Hit that heart.
I'm doing like some chest pumps. This is I lived in Miami. It's the Hialeah hop.
Okay, I got it. Hit those hearts. Let us know that you're alive. Ain't no shame in living above the status quo. Ain't no shame in living above it and trying to break that for yourself. Here's another thing. A lot of people think that positive psychology, like they think about purpose, is something that you need to chase around the whole time, right? A lot of people think this idea of happiness is something that you must feel 24/7. Shits and giggles 24/7. Skittles and rainbows falling from the sky. Pegasus. Yossef riding on Pegasus with this picture of him. This perfect picture of Yossef. No, that's not it at all, people. That's not it at all. It really is the ups and the downs and the all-arounds that you're going through. So if you are saying to yourself right now, yo, I'm not that happy today, Yossef. I was happy a year ago, but I'm not that happy today, and I don't know why. That's cool. Yep. Or if you're saying to yourself something along the lines of, you know what, I had meaning and purpose, and then I listened to what Yossef had to say, and I totally am like thrown off my path right now. That is also cool too. Your heart beats just like everybody else. If you're not up to it today, just let Yossef and I entertain you and let some of these concepts wash over you. But understand that one day you'll be telling your story. And that's what these ups and downs and all arounds are for, baby. So give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you're living your life at the fullest. Final thing is this, and then we'll get on with your story. For those of you who are like, yo, I don't know whether I'm happy or not, it changes. Yeah, it does. It changes a lot. Purpose changes a lot. It's like a target. It's a moving target, right? And so if it's changing and all that stuff, but you're saying to yourself, you know what? Regardless of where I was yesterday, today I'm going to learn from yesterday, and it's going to be even better. Even better. If I'm living at a 10, I'm going to bust that capacity, and I'm going to make it an 11. So if you're hopeful that today's even better than your other days, that takes you a long way. That's why Yossef is going to show you the other button that we want you to hit. It is called the wow face. Yossef, what does your wow face look like, son? What is your wow? Yeah, what does your wow face look like,
give me a second. Just give me a second. I need to get it ready.
Of course, he's someone who dabbles in acting. The perfect wow face. The wow face heard around the world. Yossef, thanks for playing with us at the very beginning here. But more importantly, I want to know this, man. What's your story? How did you get to this point where you can talk about dumping spiritual codependence?
Well, in order to be able to dump spiritual codependence, you have to be spiritually dependent at one point. And so, or else why would I care about dumping spiritual codependence if I wasn't spiritually dependent, right?
Makes sense.
And so that's in a nutshell. But with a little bit more information, I grew up, I was always sort of like a weird kid. I was always into spirituality, esotericism, the concept of why we're here, all of that really fascinated me. And it's sort of hard to fit in school when everyone else is like dealing with pogs, and that's what you're thinking about. But no, actually, it was before pogs.
Pogs! But pogs were the shit, baby.
You remember that?
Yeah,
Tamagotchis. Yeah.
Oh, Tamagotchis. Awesome.
But it's a value in my family as well. And my mom got into spirituality when I was about 10 years old, and we immersed ourselves in a spiritual or self-development type community, and I was in that for most of my life. And I started as a student, and as I grew up in this organization, I also became a teacher in this organization. And in a certain way, like I believe is true for most spiritual or personal development organizations, they helped me with a lot of different things, and they helped me shift my paradigm on how I saw the world around me and take more responsibility and all of those different type of things. But after like what I recognize that happened now in retrospect is that it created a new paradigm, and that new paradigm was where they wanted you to stay. Because it became from, well, here, let us help you get your life together, to, well, if you want to keep your life together, you have to stick with us. There's no other answer for you anywhere outside. And that's sort of the organization I was a part of, and for a lot of my life. And I really had, like a couple years ago, I started taking a look at where I was at, and I was seeing it was very problematic. And I think, from a certain perspective, there's the problems that happen with every organization as it grows, that it shifts its perspective from being on the message to being about getting more people. And I need more money to get more people. And we do this as coaches, and we do this as personal development organizations and political parties and political movements. They all do the same thing. They sort of forget the mission as they grow. So that was one aspect of it. But the part that I really want to take responsibility for around it was that I let myself be a follower. And I let myself, by doubting my ability to connect to myself, to connect to the world around me, to connect to something bigger than me, I gave all of that power to other people, and I let myself connect through them, even though their message theoretically was that you have it within you, but we are going to tell you how.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, and I mean, I think now for you to be talking in retrospect, like, here I am, I gave my power away when the whole time the message was there in front of me, but also at the same time when you're living it, yeah, that's a much different experience, right? Like we were part of a retreat a couple weeks ago where it's one thing to watch the movie. It's another thing to get lost in the fact that when you're the actor in the movie, sometimes your decisions are a little bit different because you get so caught up in it. And so at the time, was there something where you were like, something's off with this message, or were you just like, I just need to get my shit straight, or blah 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 blah? Like, how were you actually going through it at the time that you were going through it, Yossef?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I think that in general, we both, I think, follow and we have the same belief system that wherever you are is perfect for you at the moment. Mm-hmm. But I can say that, let's say if I was part of this organization for about 25 years of my life, then about 15 years in is when I started seeing that there were some problems. And the first problems that I saw were more externally. It was probably something around, and it was subtle. It was like, some of the behaviors of the leaders here doesn't really match with what they're teaching. There seems to be incongruencies. People aren't really walking the talk. Mm-hmm. But because you're a part of something for so long, cognitive dissonance sets in, and you're really you're saying, well, I was part of this for 15 years, so what it's going to take for me now to take a look at this is to say, hey, I made a mistake for 15 years, right? That's what your brain, the trick that your brain plays on you. And you don't want to be able to say, well, I've messed this up for 15 years, so you end up tuning to the information that actually supports your previous belief system. And that's how we all get stuck in everything. Yeah. And so at the beginning it was these subtleties, and I'd explain them in a way, and then it became things I couldn't explain away, so it became about how I'll do it better. I'll stick around here, I'll help them get better, right? So it went from like sort of like rationalizing it to being like, okay, how can I be of service and help improve the situation here? I see the problems, I'm not going to deny them, but how can I fix them? And it got to a point where I realized that they weren't really interested in fixing anything. And maybe they would say they were, but their hands are tied, or maybe they'd say straight up they weren't going to. And then my approach from there sort of shifted to, well, I'll be in integrity with what I do. But what I realized is that I really wasn't, as long as I was a part of it. That wasn't really an integrity. It's not enough for me to do it right within the organization if there's a lack of congruence between me and them, and it becomes so stark. And so that's when I realized I had to sort of step back from that and be like, hey, and reevaluate my life. And it's a scary thing to do, because my whole identity was wrapped up in there.
Yeah, I mean, 15 years part of an organization.
It's 25 actually, but yeah.
25 years part of an organization. The first 15 sounded like things were going pretty well. You start beginning to think, you start feeling some dissonance, and then you're part of it for another 10 years, which is probably this whole spiritual journey in and of itself, Now, when you ended up separating from the organization, did you separate with any kind of strange feelings? Did you separate with sort of, oh man, like I'm losing my friends, I'm losing a whole bunch of things. What were the things going through your head when you separated from it?
Well, it got to a point where I really could not separate. Like, as I became more aligned with myself, because even towards the end of my time there, I started exploring other things outside before I was ready to leave completely. And as I was exploring other types of philosophies and wisdoms and paths and reading different books and meeting different people, I saw that really the same wisdom that this organization claimed belongs to them and only they have it exists everywhere. And so my whole paradigm around that shifted for a while, but it got to a point, like what really made me have to leave was I felt a tremendous amount of pain for all the people that were in there that were continually being duped, and for the people that were leaving that organization only to join another one that would be very similar. And I saw people who were realized, okay, these guys are bad, who's the next person I'm going to follow? And that just fucking drove me crazy. I was like, don't you guys see? It's like out of the frying pan into the fire. And as soon as I had that tremendous pain, and I the truth is I couldn't really, I didn't know what it was, but I had something inside of me, like a voice inside of me that literally said to me, Yossef, you need to speak up, you need to say something. And I've done a lot of public speaking and I've put together a lot of talks, but for the life of me, I couldn't think of the words. And the voice came to me again. It says, don't think of the words, just hit record and start talking. And that's literally what happened. I came out from it was a cold LA night, whatever that means. I had a scarf on. And I came back in.
And no other clothes, because it's so nice over there. Yes, and a Speedo. Exactly. A cold LA night.
Yes. And I came back in and I just hit record and I started talking and all this stuff started coming out of me. And I realized, and only when I spoke those words, I said, as a former member of this organization, as a former student of this organization, when I said the words, I knew I was done. I didn't know it until that very moment. And that was literally the day that I left. And I posted that video on Facebook so I could go to sleep, because that was really my intention. I was I couldn't sleep. And I woke up in the morning, and for the next 3 weeks, all I was doing was answering calls and texts and come meet me and tell me and what's going on. And it became this whole thing when I realized that how many people got so pulled into this into this idea. And so
now, was this people who were feeling the same way you had felt and just weren't saying anything, or people who were trying to tell you to shut the fuck up and
was a combination.
It was okay, gotcha. And I guess even before we go into those conversations, why not just bow out quietly into the night? Why is it you knew that recording something and putting it out there, not knowing exactly what to happen, the second that the words start coming out, you say, as a former member of this organization, probably someone who's been in this organization for 25 years, there's probably jaws that are dropping right now, right?
Yeah.
Why was it important for you to record that?
Well, that's what I'm telling you. The truth is that at the time I didn't think that I was going to be posting a video as and leaving and posting it. I just knew I had to speak up, and I didn't know what I was going to say. I literally did not know that I was done until I said the words. And I think that's what happened there was, like I said, we're always looking for excuses to justify our actions and why we shouldn't change. And it got to a point where the feeling became so visceral that it forced it out of me. So I didn't actually know that I was going to say that. I just knew that I had to speak up, and I knew that it was the right action for me. And my thing isn't really about taking down any organizations or other coaches or these so-called hucksters. I don't really think that's what's going on over there. I think that's what's going on. some people out there that are narcissists and specifically looking to take advantage of other people, and those exist for sure. But regardless of that, what's happening most of the time is that people believe, like they come to this realization that they've had through some type of spiritual experience or learning something, or their life experience or whatever it was, and they come to this realization. They're like, wow, and it changes their life, and they want to share it with other people, which is a beautiful thing. That's what we want to do. When something amazing happens to us, we want to share it, and we start sharing it with other people, and then a few people all start believing the same thing, and it's like, wow, this is beautiful. Maybe there's something here, and then we want to share it more and more, and eventually it's like that original thing becomes more important than the people. And that's when it becomes problematic, because the whole thing is to help change other people's lives. And then the thing becomes more important than the people. And the truth is that the person who had the realization about whatever particular thing helped them, it probably helped them better than it can help anybody else, because it was their realization. Mm-hmm. And so what happens most of the time is that people want to share their way because it worked for them. But guess what? It worked for you because you had a different life experience, and you have a different level of consciousness, and you have a different set of issues that you're working through. And yes, to a certain extent, it will help other people because we're connected, but everyone has to find their own thing in their own way.
So are you saying that there is no universal way to live the life? Because we've got things like universal law. You know, and you know
like
what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, you know, you've heard things like universal law, right?
Yeah,
like,
I don't believe in that.
Okay.
Speaking.
Okay. And so just to throw that out there, because there are a lot of coaches who are very much like, well, it's written in universal law. Yeah. It's written in universal law. Everything is all the same. Blah, 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 blah. Starts from the inside, then moves out. And so I'm just curious to see there. When I heard you talking about that, I was like, well, I think that you're taking a shot at not necessarily the universal law, but the idea that there's one universal way to live your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there can be, but I think that it's an important stage to go through where you believe in universal law, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people today, you know, like, are disenfranchised by religion. Why? Because it's a universal law. They say, well, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. But then what happens is that those spiritual pathways that they follow just offer them new universal laws. Now, I see the value in that, because when you come from a place of a lot of confusion and just like total lack of clarity, it helps to gain some structure through universal laws to bring you to a point where you can coast. But that's the problem is with these spiritual organizations, personal development organizations, coaching, all that stuff, is that it keeps you a lot in that stage within the universal laws. Really, what comes out of that is understanding that nothing external can actually benefit me as much as what I find internal to myself. And that internal aspect can't be universal. It's so personal. We each have a unique expression of who we are through our life experiences and everything that's happened to us, and everything that we learn and everything that we experience at any given moment. And so that unique experience creates our personal universal law. It's universal to ourself. And that's the next stage in terms of this thing about shifting paradigms. We needed it. Like, we needed organized religion, because before that we were just killing and raping each other. And organized religion brought in structure and morals and ethics, because we needed a God that punishes us to stop us from killing each other. And then we realized, well, hey, you can be moral and ethical without God telling you to do that. There's other reasoning for that. And then we started getting into spirituality, and this whole but even the spirituality, like I said, became very directed. I think that the next stage of evolution, I think a lot of people are already in this stage, is recognizing within themselves, like you said, at any moment I can check in with myself and see what's the next one right thing for me to do. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to. Yeah, go ahead.
No. I want you to keep going, bro. Like, I mean, you're completely waking. I'm completely awake now. We got Joanna who's saying, universal law, only love is real. We got Joanna saying that. We got Barbara tuning in saying hi to us. We got Jorge in Puerto Rico. So you got a lot of people right now that are just like, I don't want to say on behalf of them, but like, this is a very activating thing, that we could be switching from universal law to this next stage. of evolution,
Yes.
and one in which when you said it's going to become more individual law, and I'm like, oh my god, then the idea of community doesn't exist anymore. But I have a feeling that
I'm
you're
so
going to show
happy you brought that up.
you're going to show me
Yeah.
the paradox that the paradox of this, and how it's a beautiful paradox.
Yes.
So
Everything exists in paradox.
Yeah.
And our whole life we're trying to reconcile paradoxes, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to see how the different ideas sort of come together. Instead of just enjoying the beauty of the paradox itself, right? We try and solve things and fix things and shove it together.
Yes.
Well, the truth is that if you're in community under all the universal law and everyone believes the same thing, we're always trying to create a like-minded community. Well, everyone has the same mind, that no one has anything to offer to you and you have nothing to offer to anybody else. We should not be creating like-minded communities. That's the pathway to death. The way we grow is by friction. The way we got to wherever we are in terms of evolution is by friction, right? And that creates mutation. And then the mutation, we go and we adapt to survive. And we have to do that spiritually. We see that in everything else, right? In business, you always have to come up with something that sets you apart from the competition. In music and in art, you learn the basics. You learn about light and shadow, about color, about the octaves and the musical range and all of that. And then you go and you break the rules if you actually want to share anything of value.
You play jazz, baby.
You play jazz, exactly. Yeah. But in personal development, it's always been, well, let me show you the way, and then just do that. Let's create our like-minded community. Don't create a like-minded community. Create a community around similar values, like only love is real, about this idea of connecting to each other and treating each other with tolerance and human dignity and love, and all of that is wonderful, but have very different ideas of how to create that and share those ideas and be okay with not knowing and being okay with being wrong, and that's how we grow. If we don't take on those values, it becomes problematic. And then that reconciles the individual. Bring your individuality and you bring value to your community with your different ideas and your different thoughts. And then you're a real member of community.
You know what? I think you could become a little bit more passionate about this. You're a little dry and boring right now. No, I absolutely love it. And I think one of the things that I'm thinking about is when I first got into community building and organizing, the first tenets, it wasn't a law, but one of the things that we always wished for is that we could create these zones of not safe zones, but zones of discomfort.
Yeah. Yes.
In which what was expected was that there would be controversy with civility. That's one of the throwbacks to the Joy Revolution, is that we want people coming in with controversy, but with a certain amount of civility in it. We want it to be a zone of dissonance for everybody. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting because, if you think about it, like if you stay in a safety zone for 20-something years, there will be no growth. There will be no growth. You'll basically turn into an automaton and just kind of follow the day-to-day structure of what you think is the sort of structure for that everyone should live under. It could be very dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous, and we're seeing it in every aspect of our life. We've talked a lot about like personal development, but it's happening politically in a big part further than they've ever been before, because they're not willing to listen to the other side. And I can tell you, when I speak to a conservative, I'm totally always bringing up liberal arguments. When I speak to liberal, I totally bring up the conservative arguments, because they need also want to listen to them and hear what they think and challenge them on it, because we need to start being open to thinking differently, but like you said, with love, with civility. Well, that's the way to do it. If there is anything universal, it is probably love.
Well, I wanted to look at this. A person who I accused initially of being a happy nihilist, but look at you finding something universal like love, coming full circle on me, man. I still think you're a happy nihilist. It's hard for me
to refute that one. I haven't found an argument.
Joanna, you just got him. The show's over. It's been like stumps Yossef today, and we got him. No, but I think something that is very interesting right now is that you said, if you look around, you can see us kind of moving towards a personal universal law. But also at the same time, some of this friction is showing up as, well, if you don't fucking like what I have to say, then you can unfriend me right now. Well, end of conversation. That's the end of conversation, right? So how is it that you're seeing this actually switching from the universal law to the personal universal law. And by the way, I noticed that there is a poor network connection because it is raining. So if you can't hear me, let me know. Because, I'm all about making sure that you can hear what's going on.
You're freezing up a little bit, but it's mostly good. It's
okay.
Mostly good.
Okay. Yeah. So how is it that you are seeing that we're moving from the universal law to the personal universal law that you mentioned earlier? Like, because to me, you could easily say, no, it's more of a world of friction. One in which we aren't respecting each other right now. One in which it's hard to trust people right now. Even the people we're looking to uplift us, might get stuck in their own dogma after a while. And like, how do we actually figure this out for ourselves? So that's multiple questions. It's not the way that
you're stacking.
I'm stacking. So pick one of those questions and answer it, please.
All right. So I think that a lot of time that we're looking to change the world around us because we see the problems in it, and it comes from a beautiful place. But really, the greatest service that we can bring to the world is being authentically ourselves. So don't worry about anybody else. Just worry about starting to strip away from yourself all of the belief systems and taking a look at them and saying, is this really me? Is this really mine? Or is this something that I've learned? And I think a lot of people are doing that. You're seeing the fact that someone like Donald Trump could become president is such a crazy thing that people were willing to think outside of the box and hire someone who had no political background. I'm not saying that I necessarily support that, but that particular, or that I think that I would make that move, but that concept exists, and people are stripping away things in terms of like the way that they look at relationships and marriage, that it's just a construct and maybe there's other ways to live. Have to be married within these rules that were created archaically in the Middle Ages. People are looking at all those different things. Now, we have to do that also as an individual, because that's happening as a society, but we have to do it as an individual. What part of this is the programming from my parents? What part of it is programming from society? What part of this is programming from the social media that's constantly filtering in my eyes all day? And how much of it is what I really care about? Like, if none of that existed, what would I want to do right now? What would bring meaning into my life right now? And if we can ask ourselves those questions, we'll actually create the life where we will have the most impact and where we will actually enjoy the most and have the most pleasure. But we have to be more in tune with ourselves, and that's what's really important, more than trying to force the world around us to capitulate to what we think it should be.
It sounds like very much, for those of you who are watching, and I'm seeing you, Dorothy, I see you, Barbara, they're all commenting right now, but for those of you who have ever felt something like this, I mean, the first thing I think about is this idea of seeking, right? And the seeking starts from almost like an external thing, like whether you go to a bookstore and you look to acquire knowledge, or whether you join a spiritual organization and look for your own growth as a result of that. But it's sort of like an external seeking. And then what I'm hearing from you right now is that, well, before you go and spiral out, baby, think about what the spiral in looks like, and think about what that internal journey is. And let's think about stripping off these belief systems. Would you say that that's one of the first things to do, to shed yourself from the codependency that we can fall into?
I think a lot of times those two things happen at the same time, right?
Okay, yep.
Because when you check in with yourself, you'll be like, what's the next thing I want to learn? And I'm not saying to now, like, don't learn from anybody or anything because everybody's corrupt.
Yes,
that's not what
he
I'm
is.
trying
Yes,
to say.
he is. I'm just kidding.
That's like on the underground. But what I'm really saying is that your heart will always show you the way. And so I'll give you just an example from my life. So I was part of this very particular system, and I found it to be like the way that they approached how to solve problems to be very cerebral based. And I also got into coaching, and into coaching, again, most of the coaching work is either with our emotional selves or our cerebral selves.
Yeah.
We're working with the mind and emotions most of the time. And being in spirituality, I always learned about this concept of energy, but I don't think I ever viscerally felt energy, or very rarely viscerally felt it. So people talk about energy, I'm like, oh, there's energy. And I was like, I don't know if I feel that. I believe it, but I haven't felt it. So then what I went to go study at that time, I was Tantra. I thought that Tantra would be a good path for me because it felt like that in terms of a spiritual path, it wasn't so neglectful of the energetic self and of the physical self. It was how to incorporate that more. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the concepts that they taught when I was studying that was a concept called samyama. And samyama is a Sanskrit word, and it's basically a process that you use in order to integrate new knowledge. And it's got three steps. The first step is focus, the second is meditation, and the third step is unification. And you can do this with a person, you can do this with a concept, you can do it with like a new thing that you haven't seen before and you're looking to integrate into your life. And for me, like a concept of samyama where I've seen it externally is if you take a look at like the works of Paramahamsa Yogananda, they've incorporated Jesus into their system somehow. And it was so strange for me to see that there's like a philosophy that's 5,000 years old that incorporates something that came from 3,000 years later. Because in every other way, it's always been the opposite, right? It's always been like that's what they used to do. This is the new way, and that's like that was the Old Testament. This is the New Testament, And then there's always been like we're gonna change the past, and this was a philosophy that was open-minded enough to see something new and incorporate it. And they incorporated Christ consciousness without all the dogma that came with it. And so that was an interesting concept for me. And so when we learned about samyama, what we were taught was when you learn something new, you focus on it, you meditate, you unify with it, and then when you unify with it, you use your internal compass to sort of see what resonates with you. Take that and leave the rest. And so even when we would eat, we would do this. We would say, whatever nourishes me, I'm going to keep and let the rest pass through. And so with every new thing, with every new person, with every interaction, with every bit of wisdom, what resonates with me, I'll keep and let the rest pass through. The only thing that was funny is they said, so as long as you stay on a path of tantra, then you can incorporate anything. And what I decided to do was say, well, I'm going to samyama your samyama, and I will take from it what's right for me without having to now to define myself in this new pathway. So I don't have to. I'm not a tantric or a coach or a psychologist or a teacher. I'm someone who's having an experience, and I will always take what's best in that experience to co-create my life with it.
Now, what do you mean by the word co-creation here? Are you talking about co-creation in community, or are you talking about co-creation with something else?
Well, it's the same, I guess, because and I have a tendency to philosophize, so if I'm getting too philosophical, bring me back down to earth, Mark. Mm-hmm. But and this is part of the idea of why I think individuation is important, but community is important as well, because both of those aspects are valuable, and they're the two sides of the paradox. So there's the part of us. There's one way to look is that we're all one, right? This very spiritual concept. We're all one. We're all interconnected. God is expressed through all of us, but at the same time, there's a unique expression in each one of us. So you can take a look at it sort of to see it as there's the white light and there's all the colors of the rainbow, and which one is true? Well, they're both true. It's just how do you perceive it? And so when I say co-create, if you say, well, am I co-creating with God? Am I co-creating with the divine, with the universe? Am I co-creating with others? Well, what's really the difference? There is no difference, because we're all one, but we're all also uniquely expressed. So when I talked about before where we bring our unique expression into the community, well, I'm co-creating with them. And this idea of allowing myself to be open to new ideas and new thought allows me to be cooperative and co-create instead of push up against and fight.
Okay, and so I'm throwing it out there right now. This is really, there's a lot of nuances here, right? That someone can easily dismiss, but also at the same time, the reason why there's this idea of dismissal is because the paradoxes align with the reason why we should rationalize and go back to our old structures. For example, I'm throwing it out there. This idea of samyama that you're talking about goes directly against how I was raised as being a good Catholic. I was told, you take in 100% of it, you believe all of it, you question none of it, and the Catholics that were called the ones that are like, oh, they just kind of take from these other religions and keep what they want. They're the buffet Catholics that are on the buffet line and take what they want. Yes. And so I'm even thinking about what you're getting at right now, and I'm like, even if we're not using terms like buffet style and all that stuff, a lot of structures ingrain that into us. Like, hey, bro, don't take from that other line. Everything that you need here is in the cup that I'm feeding you right now. And you're hungry, and I know what you need. That's why I'm feeding you. You don't need to be going to something else to be thinking about what it is that you want or that you need. Right. And so that's what I'm kind of... and
there's a lot of value to that. And that's why I don't think that I'm not going to judge it and say it's the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the right way for me.
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is that everybody should check in with themselves and say, well, is this really serving me? Did it serve you?
Right? I mean, maybe at the certain time, but at this point, it doesn't serve me. You know,
exactly.
And so there's other things that resonate now where maybe 20 years ago I would get defensive and want to maybe out argue or show you the Bible works or whatever. No, I never used the Bible.
I was the same way. I totally
really did. That's really interesting. Yeah. I want to share some of the things that are coming up right now with some of the listeners and the viewers. Dorothy's saying this. You got a lot of people thinking about their own personal law right now, Yossef. You little disruptor, you. Personal law, simple. Be kind and loving. Respect others' beliefs, but follow your own heart and what feels right to you. Heart for Yossef. Yossef, are you feeling that? You feeling the fact that some of these people are thinking about where they want to go? Barbara, good point. One must talk and understand why people believe what their life experience is, and so like not completely writing off someone else's life experience, sort of having this curiosity like you had when you were younger, not to get too caught up in a dogma, and just kind of asking questions. Dorothy came back and said this afterwards. Life and your beliefs do not have to fit in a box, baby. You can be inspired by many different teachers and apply their teachings to your life in ways that feel right to you. Again, you can't see it right now, but it says your heart will always show you the way. It's the quote that you have, and I still have it on top. It is when we become dependent on just one particular thing and do not see anything beyond that where the dependency becomes apparent.
Yes.
So you've got some folks who are thinking some good things about this dependency. And are thinking about sort of their own internal compass that, you know what, for many people, they probably ignore that internal compass for a bit, right? It's probably screaming at them by the time that they figure out that the heart will show you the way. What do you have to say to folks right now who are like, okay, like I'm beginning to believe this personal law tip. I'm completely like financially investing in other institutions that are probably not necessary, that I might be outgrowing right now, right? Mm-hmm. Which is natural. It's natural to outgrow things. I might feel stuck right now. What does this journey look like for me? I don't want to go out there and put my old organization on blast, or you actually didn't intend on that. You just wanted to record something. So like, if someone is kind of in this dissonance right now, what would you say to them? And I know that you're like, well, each individual is different, right? But there's a certain oneness in the journey that you talked about as well. Mm-hmm. So like, what are some things that we can extrapolate to help us with that internal compass? Okay, the heart is saying one thing, I'm doing another. Yossef, I heard what you said when you were talking about living in integrity and how important that was for you. Now, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for a viewer who wants that for themselves? Not necessarily your life, but wants that sort of heart-driven life. Yeah.
So for me, the whole idea is, and again, everyone can test it and take it or leave it, but the whole concept is that self-love is what's going to show you the way, and self-love comes through self-acceptance. And so if wherever you are right now, first of all, accept that. Whatever qualities you have, accept them. This was a huge lesson for me, that, a lot of spirituality talks about breaking down the ego, and when you break down the ego, that's your way to sort of like salvation and enlightenment and all that good stuff. And that a lot of time, breaking down the ego comes with lack of accepting ourselves and having to fix something about ourselves, which to me doesn't resonate with the idea that a perfect being would only create other perfect beings, right? Like, we're all perfect as is. And the only thing that creates turmoil for us is the lack of acceptance of ourselves as is. And that's why we act out of our pain, and we end up hurting each other and ourselves. And when we accept ourselves, then we can better listen to our heart. So if you if you know that your heart's saying something and you're doing something else, the idea or the instinct might be, well, I need to force myself to listen to my heart. Well, if you're forcing yourself, then how much are you really loving yourself? Maybe first accept the fact that, and be okay with the fact that you're not listening. And like, there's reasons why. There's reasons why people stay in a codependent relationship, even though they know it's not best, but it's what they're choosing at the moment. And accept that and love yourself for making that choice of taking care of yourself. And the more that you focus on true self-love and self-acceptance, you strengthen that internal compass, and everything else will naturally happen, and all the choices will shift for you. There is no work to do. There is no problems to change. You are perfect as you are, and when you accept that and you love yourself for who you are, you will naturally progress to whatever the next step is. There is no way to do it. And if there is one way, it's through self-love and self-acceptance. Again, love.
Would you say that you're at a point of full-on self-love and self-acceptance right now?
I'm not at a full point of self-love and self-acceptance, but I would say that I'm dramatically different than I was. I remember one of the biggest shifts for me was embracing the fact that I'm a critical and cynical person. Okay. And I used to be like, oh, my cynicism and my criticism, the criticism of myself, criticism of others, that's such a bad thing. It's stopping me from really loving myself and connecting to myself. Maybe I should stop being critical. And when I tried to cut out this piece of me that God put in me, this criticism that for whatever reason was chosen to like be a part of who I am, when I tried to cut it away, that was the opposite. And when I realized, you know what? I love that I'm critical. I love that I'm critical. It gives me discernment. It helps me work on myself and push myself forward. It helps me evolve. It helps me all those things. Wow, I really love my criticism. And when I like finally like recognized how much I love that about myself, it stopped becoming a negative quality. It's something that I use, and it helps me to see the world around me differently. And to be discerning of the world around me and discerning of what's right for me and what's not right for me.
This is huge. We got Barbara that's lit up right now. She's absolutely agreeing with your self-love and throwing out Barbara's like on fire today. And then she threw in this idea of authenticity. Just the fact that she's there, and now she's giving shout outs. She's taking over the show right now. She's throwing her own shout outs. Barbara, I miss you. I hope that you're picking up a lot of the stuff that Yossef is throwing down right now. Yossef, look at this, dude. It's 12:52 my time. We've been in 52 straight minutes of flow. I don't know if what you believe in, because at first I was like, man, he's much more of a nihilist than I thought, and that was my judgment, and I'm sticking with it because I love it, because like it's such a critical mind that you're putting on things, and things that I'm believing in, I'm really thinking twice about now, because I'm like, wow, it's not like I've gotten to this end of the rainbow. Like I talk about it in the beginning of the show, like it's not all shits and giggles, and like, I think that I go to a couple retreats on consciousness, and I've got my shit straight. I watch The Matrix, I'm good to go, and I love the fact that there's still this idea of spiraling inward, and it's not work, but there's it's almost like I talked about this on another show, like right now it's like a rosebud, and the rosebud is perfect today, but I also know that it'll bloom into a rose, and it will be perfect on that day too. And then the day that rose falls out of bloom and starts to decay, that's perfect too, because something new will grow again. And I love what you're talking about here. It really is this idea of continual examination, continual growth, and where I can be blaming hucksters, it really is what's going on internally with my love and acceptance of self. Maybe I don't trust what's going in my heart enough that I'm giving my power away to others to try to have them tell me what it is. And of course, they'll be obliged to tell me what's wrong with me. And, but that's their viewpoint of things. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not really about like fighting these organizations or these other coaches. And that's not my intention. And my intention is just to speak from my heart. Because the idea when you're fighting something, you're giving it energy just as much as when you're supporting something. And when you talked about like this idea of nihilism, well, in a way, nihilism is like maybe a shadow side, but it's the same aspect as enlightenment, because enlightenment is about nothingness. It's about the zero. It's about going to no value, no judgment, no nothing. And it's a great place from which to draw out the world the way that you like. And I think that's the game that we play. It's another paradox. Well, do you want to be in this world or the other world? Do you want to be in the nothingness or in the is? So you want to be in both at the same time, because you want to go back and always have your canvas, but then you want to paint in it. And that's where you use your ego that people said is bad. It's like you create with that into the world. That's what I want to, that's the beauty and the colors that I want to bring into it. And it just helps to do that when you first, or at least constantly, like play this like salsa, step forward, step back, in and out of this, like from the nothingness and then back into the world, and create that way.
I absolutely love it. Brother, if we were in California, I have a feeling this would have gone another hour. Especially if we were eating hamburgers. You gotta come back. You gotta come back. I miss you. I can't wait to reconnect with you. Speaking of painting with colors, Yossef Sagi, you just launched your @YossefSagi Instagram. It's brand new, so we can be early adopters and watch you painting and see things through your perspective. What are we gonna get when we go to your Instagram?
Yeah, because my Instagram up until now was just like a personal Instagram. I didn't think much of it, so it's like sometimes I'm doing yoga or cooking or like, and then every now and then there's like an inspirational quote. It's like very random. So I created this new one that would be a little bit more focused. It's called Carve Your Path, but the tag is my name is just Yossef Sagi, and what it has so far on it, you can read some blogs that I wrote that came to me an inspiration about my journey, because I'm just sharing my experience instead of trying to tell people what to do. So most of this is about sharing experience instead of being sort of informative or directive. So you're going to have a lot of that, some of my writings, sometimes things that came to me, sometimes things that I'm doing. I was just in New York and I went for, like, my sister had a baby, and that's the reason that I went, and I ended up doing 2 workshops there on the masculine and feminine and divine intimacy, and it just sort of created itself. Like literally one class happened, like someone called me and says, can you do this for us? And within an hour and a half, they got 10 people there. And none of them were people I knew. And so some of it will be stuff like that. It's just me trying to authentically share with you what's going on. So I can't promise any specifics, but it will be a sharing of experience.
I love it. It's above his head right now. Let's go to Yossef Sagi on Instagram. And I can't wait to see this journey with you, and I can't wait to see the interactionism and co-creation that happens just from watching this journey and you sharing the stories. Yossef, you haven't said it all, but you've said it all for now. You've said it all for now. We're turning off the golden mic. We're cutting you, but this is the reason why the show is called the Golden Mic. I just want to thank you, and you are an inspirational dude, man, and I love what's going on your end. I love the fact that we're neighbors now, and I can see you a little bit more, so we can grab a burger together.
And I want to thank you. Yeah, I want to thank you for really creating the space for this. This is very valuable, and I love that we ended up bumping into each other at that retreat. I don't think that each of us knew the other one would be there, and we got to wrestle a little bit. It was so weird, right? We just jumped each other and started wrestling. Like, it was like, why are we doing this? There was something,
I don't know. There, as nihilistic as you are, but there was this certain familiarity that we had, in which it was just like, yeah, I can put this guy in an armbar right now. I can't do it with Luke, but I can do it with Yossef. Well, this is the reason. We'll definitely have you back, man. And this is the reason why the show is called the Golden Mic right now, though. A little visioning experience, if you can, for now. I want you to imagine right now, or actually there is a golden mic that's coming down from your ceiling over there in California, and it's stopping in front of you The power of this golden mic, Yossef, is that it translates into every language all across the world. And when I flip the script, or when I flip not the script, when I flip the switch, everyone is listening. You have something to say just like everybody else, Yossef. So your golden mic is live now.
Thank you. So something that's coming to me is that once I was just in flow and I was talking to someone, I said, what's meant for you will be for you when you are who you're meant to be. What's meant for you will be for you when you are who you're meant to be. But I want to tweak it now. That it's not anything in the future, it's happening right now. You bring meaning into your life right now with who you already are authentically, and you create right now everything that's yours.
Yossef, I want you to take that golden mic. It's a little bit heavy, right? We're going to pass that to somebody next, but I want you to hold it in your hand. I want you to feel that weight. I want you to feel that gravity. Now I want you to blow that golden mic up. I want you to toss it on the ground and explode it. Yossef Sagi, my brother from another mother. It's good to see you. Yes, Jenny Wiley, you missed it. Catch the replay. Share it out.
Jenny!
It's good to see you, Jenny. Share it out. On behalf of Yossef, this has been episode 126. And Yossef and I have a question for you. The nihilist and the Filipino have a question for you. It's this. If you're feeling happy right now, and you're feeling a certain sense of calling or purpose, whatever you want to call it, what is your responsibility to change history for the better? Yossef, Marc, we are out. Love you too, Jenny. See you later. Oh,